Hello and welcome to the Patent Pending Made Simple podcast. I'm your host, Samar Shah, and with me is Jamie Brophy. Jamie, how are you?
Hey, Summer. I am good. Glad to be talking to you today. How are you doing?
I am doing all right. I am glad to be talking to you about this topic. I think we have discussed this in some version of this in a previous episode, but it might have been in very legal terms. So I think we're going to try to approach a similar topic in a slightly different way that is maybe more listener friendly, less legalese, hopefully. But this comes up very often, I think, in our practice, right? So I think I'm glad to be able to tackle this with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that I deal with weekly, if not daily. And that is the question of what is the difference between a concept and an invention? Oftentimes I deal with it in terms of, I have a meeting with a potential client. They tell me about their idea, and I'm like, well, this is more at the concept stage, not quite at the invention stage. So we're going to be talking about the difference between a concept and an invention today and kind of how to get from one to the other.
Very good. So, yeah, it's an idea. I thought that's what patents did, Jamie. They protected ideas. Is that not right?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, there's a difference between an idea and an invention. My kids are like, hey, I have an idea. We need a robot that cleans our room, and I'm like, well, that's an idea. It's not an invention quite yet. So the difference between an idea and an invention is an idea is more of like kind of an abstract concept, whereas an idea is a more like fleshed out, tangible thing. So I think we had a specific example we were going to talk about, Summer, but, in general, that's kind of the difference between the two. What do you think? Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's right. The listeners may be listening in, they might be saying, whoa, why are you guys talking about this? Why is this important? And the reason we're talking about this is because an idea is not patentable, right? That's what the legal rules, patent statutes say. But an invention is patentable, right? So it is not just like we're splitting hairs with terminology, idea versus invention, but this has real legal implications around it. And that's why we're talking about this. And oftentimes, not oftentimes, but sometimes inventors come to us with an idea and we have to turn them back and say, no, 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 you got to do some more work on it and then come back to us and we'll help you protect it once it's an invention. So I think this is a good topic to talk about. Before we jump into our example, let's say I have a 6-year-old and his birthday recently came and I was like, what do you want for your birthday? And he was like, I want a robot that cleans my room. It's very much thinking along the same lines.
Yeah, I guess it's a universal thing. I mean, my youngest, my 12-year-old, has a few robots that do different things, but none of them clean his room. But he does seem to be working on it.
Well, okay, so I'll just take a quick aside. Hopefully, our listeners will find this interesting. But I did look for robots for him that he could like maybe program or like do some things with. And all the robots that I found online or at toy stores were like literally toys. Like they just like record what you say and say it back in a funny way or something like that. I was like, there's a market for robots that can do more, that kids can program and have gears and stuff like that. But no, I couldn't find much of anything on sale in the marketplace today.
Yeah, yeah. I think the closest thing would be like a Roomba that would vacuum the floor, but I don't think he would appreciate that for his birthday present.
That's right. So hopefully we're giving our listeners, inventors, a marketplace idea to pursue. I'd
Right.
gladly buy a robot that does a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. Getting back to the question at hand, the difference between an idea or a concept and an invention in the patent world is what we call reduction to practice. Reduction to practice means, you've gone from this idea or concept in your head to a prototype or kind of like a prototype on paper, where you've had engineering drawings, you've figured out kind of what all the parts are, what they do, how they interact with each other. So in the patent world, that's the main difference between the idea phase and the invention phase. What do you think, Summer? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. That's a good way to think about it. Like in more tangible way, I kind of think of it, I don't know, this is an idea that has always been in my head since I went to law school. But if you're familiar with like Leonardo da Vinci, he had these early concept drawings of like a flying machine, right? Like
Hmm.
getting humans to fly. And to me, I was like, this is an idea until the Wright brothers came along and figured out how to make an airplane fly, right? Like how to displace air in a particular way to let this thing float. Then it became an invention, right? Like that's something you can patent. Da Vinci's like flying machine drawings would not be patentable in my opinion. I don't know, I don't know if that's helpful to anyone listening, but that's how I always thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great example. I mean, I think that's exactly what we're talking about today. say.
Okay, very good. So let's get into our example because I think it will help demystify. Like, this is such an abstract topic and it's easy to kind of get into the abstract here, but let's see if we can make it a little bit more concrete for our listener. So I'm going to come up with an idea, and then Jamie, you will create a invention version of the same idea. So my idea is that I have an idea for a toothbrush that brushes your teeth automatically. So I don't have to go through the motion of brushing my teeth and potentially missing things. And this is going to be a great advancement in dental care.
Yeah. So I think it's a great idea. Obviously, we're all aware of electric toothbrushes, but at some point, that was an idea that somebody had, and then they worked on it until it became an invention. So in order for that to become an invention, you need to figure out how it's going to oscillate by itself, what kind of motor you're going to use, where that motor is going to fit within the device, how it's going to be attached to the bristles, how it's going to be turned off and on, things like that. So, once you figure out all of those details, then you're more in like the invention space versus the concept space. So, yeah, what do you think, Summer?
Yeah, I think that is right. But I would say the line is a little bit earlier than that, right? You don't need to maybe figure out all those details as an inventor, right? You do need to figure out like that it has to have a motor, right? That it has to have a brush head. It has to be able to fit inside a user's mouth potentially. So I don't know exactly where the line is. Like we're assuming we're in a world where electric brushes don't exist. Yeah, like I think we'll explore this later on in the podcast too. But the line is somewhere I think between what I said and what you said, and closer to what you said.
Yeah. So, I guess the question would be at what point can you file a patent application? And, we've talked about this in the past on the podcast, but I think kind of that in between stage, where you're kind of working towards or you're still kind of figuring out some of the details of your invention. You have a pretty good idea of how it's going to work, but you haven't exactly figured out how it's going to work, is a good time to file that provisional so that you can have some patent protection while you enlist other people to help you figure out some of the specific details. Would you agree with that, Summer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Okay, Jamie, that's a good point. Why don't we go back to our analogy here and see if we can distill a better fine line here for our listeners? But if I'm the person who has this idea for a self-cleaning toothbrush or a toothbrush that will automatically clean my teeth, and I come to you and I say, hey, help me patent this, Jamie, what would you say?
I would say, I think it's a great idea. I think a lot of people would want such an invention, but it's not quite ready for a patent yet. So, kind of the idea behind a patent is that if somebody that has some experience in this field can read your patent application, and just from the amount of detail in your patent application, they'll be able to make and use your invention. That's kind of the bar of the level of detail you need to have in your patent application. So, yeah, I would tell that person, you're kind of at the concept stage, and we need to work out some of the details of how this is going to work and what the parts are and how they kind of cooperate with each other. And we need a little bit more detail before it's ready for a patent application. So then hopefully they would take some time to think through how it's going to work, think through some of those details, and then come back with a more fleshed out invention.
Yeah, you make a really good point, Jamie. Normally, I would talk about the philosophical underpinnings of our patent system, but the enablement requirement, somebody reading your document and being able to reproduce your invention, is a big one, right? I mean, that is the exchange. For 20 years of exclusivity, you have to disclose your invention to the world. And when you just write up a patent that says it's a, automatically cleaning, teeth cleaning device, it could mean a million different things to a million different readers, right? Somebody could read that document and say, oh, it's a whitening strip, but with toothpaste on it. Somebody else could think, oh, it's a flossing strip with a toothpaste on it, or what have you. Somebody else could think it's an electric toothbrush. It could be lots of different things. And that is breaking the contract, right? The exchange between our kind of federal system or the patent system and the inventor, where you haven't shared anything, right? Other than the idea. Like the reason the government and the patent system wants to share ideas is so that other people can build on top of that, right? They don't want inventors to kind of hold their ideas in secret, because the idea is that products and inventions build on top of each other. And if we can encourage people to share their inventions, then we can encourage progress in humanity and sciences and technology. So that's why I didn't want to get into some of the philosophical. I promised to stay away from legalese on this episode, but I think that's hopefully good context to help you understand why these rules exist in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a little hard to grasp. And I think a lot of times people are like, oh, I have this great idea. I need to get a patent on it. It's unfortunately, we sometimes have to tell them, well, it's not quite ready for a patent yet. You need to put a little bit more work into it. It's a great idea. Keep going, but you need to put a little bit more work into it before we're able to file a patent application on it.
That's right. So, Jamie, so I initially came to you with this, automatic tooth cleaning device. You said, nope, it doesn't seem very patentable just yet. So I go back to the drawing board and I say, okay, well, this thing has a brush head that either oscillates or rotates and is driven by an electric motor. And then I come back to you and I say, hey, Jamie, I have this idea now. It is more concrete. It has a brush head that does these two things, one of these two things, and it has a motor. Can I get it? Am I patent eligible now?
Yeah, so I think we're getting there. I think the question is, whether somebody that has some skill in this related to this field would be able to make and use that invention based on that level of detail. So, like I said, I think we're getting there. I think we need probably a little bit more detail in how the motor cooperates with the bristles. Like how are they attached, make the bristles move, whatever movement you want them to do. So, I think it still needs a little bit more detail before it's ready for a patent, but I think we're getting there. What do you think, Summer?
Yeah, I think that might be enough from my perspective to get a patent. But I think reasonable people could disagree on this, right? And I think there is some tension here where if somebody told me those two things, also depends, like you said, on the state of the art, right? So, like,
Mhm. Yeah.
if like motors, particularly like handheld size motors that can deliver enough power to oscillate a brush head known, I would be comfortable with filing a patent on this, right? Because like somebody else could make this thing just by reading this document. They could do some research to figure out how the motor connects to the brush head. There's known mechanisms for it. It doesn't require undue experimentation, but it really depends on the state of the art, right? So I don't want the listeners to just like automatically say the analysis ends here because I have how a couple of items of how things are happening, but it's really technology dependent and case dependent. In the toothbrush example, I would say it's enough because we know enough about motors. Like a person of skill in the art would know enough about motors, I think, and would know about how to connect a motor to a moving mechanical device, right? It would just be a gear or a cog of some sort, and that might be enough. It's right on the fence line. And the question for the inventor is, do you want to be on the fence line, right? Where it could be yes or no? Or do you want to spend a little bit more time and work out more of the details? The details that I would want to know about would be like, hey, how much electrical power are you delivering to the brush head, right? Like at some point, if you deliver too much power, you're going to damage the gums or the teeth or the enamel of the user, right? If you are not delivering enough power, then you're not doing a good enough job of cleaning. So like if you can work out some of those parameters, that makes your patent stronger. It kind of takes you out of the fence line and into the safe zone, if you will, for lack of a better term. Yeah, I mean, that's just one example, right? We're not inventors, but details like the ones you mentioned, the ones I mentioned, get you much closer into the safe zone than being right on the edge.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree with all of that. And it could also be that, they know that there has to be a motor. They know that there have to be bristles that are configured to oscillate or rotate. And it could be that they have some ideas for some of these other solutions that you and I mentioned, but they just haven't quite nailed it down yet. They might have some ideas for different mechanisms for connecting the bristles to the motor. They might have some ideas for kind of a range of how much power the motor needs to have, but they maybe haven't nailed that down yet. That's fine. Those are things that can be, further developed while they're working on their invention. And that's probably enough detail for a patent application. And we can include some of those different options in the patent application. So, that's another thing to consider. But yeah, absolutely. The state of the art comes into play. It depends on how much innovation there is in that field, how much is already known in that field. So yeah, I think those were all really good points.
Yeah, and these things also interact with other things. So if an inventor came to me and said, I have a teeth cleaning device that has brush head that either oscillates or rotates and a motor, I would say maybe, arguably, you met the enablement requirement, but you might not meet the other requirements, right? Like the non-obviousness requirement. I would say there's probably lots of prior art on using a motor to drive an oscillating brush head of some sort, like maybe not for teeth cleaning, but for cleaning jewelry or what have you, right? There could be like for cleaning large industrial equipment, that kind of stuff. So, that's why it's not great to just rely on the enablement requirement as your sole source of patenting decision, because like eventually you're going to start bumping up into other requirements that's going to say, oh, you're not patentable anymore because this is obvious in light of other machines that exist, right? So as we said, having those voltage tolerances, the connections, like if you had to seal the thing in some way to make it waterproof, all those details can help you overcome those other objections, the novelty objections, the non-obviousness objection, even if the basic invention meets the enablement requirements. So the more work you do, the more you figure out how, I think the better your patent application, I think is what we're saying.
Yes, absolutely. And we've definitely had people that have come to us, where they're kind of, at some stage of the invention, we filed a provisional application, and while their provisional was pending, they refined the invention a little bit more, and we're able to include those refinements in the non-provisional stage of the patent process. So yeah, I mean, I think even if you don't have every single question answered and you're still working on it, it's still, you still might be ready for a provisional patent application. I think it's just important to check with your patent professional and get their advice and their opinion on kind of where you're at in the patent process. Do you have anything to add to that, Summer?
Yeah, no, I think that advice is maybe more relevant on this podcast episode than others. I mean, it's always relevant, but yeah, as you can see, this is a very nuanced kind of conversation, and it is impossible for us to educate you on all the nuances around it. There are certainly some legal rules and parameters, and even those legal rules and parameters have nuances and exceptions. So it is good to talk to an attorney or an agent who knows what they're talking about. But additionally, there are fact-based nuances as well, right? So the legal rules are nuanced, but this is a very fact-based query. And as Jamie said, it has to do with what the state of the art is. What is a person of ordinary skill in the art, right? Somebody who is as generally as skilled as the inventor, let's say, like what is their educational background? What kind of technology areas are they exposed to, right? Like would a person of ordinary skill in the art in the toothbrush space, would they know about motors, right? How motors operate? Would they know about small motors in particular? Would they know about how to connect a motor to a brush head? Like if they have a PhD in electrical engineering, then yeah, I think you would expect them to know all these things. But if they don't, right? If they have if they're a dentist, for example, maybe they don't know how any of the electrical components work, and then the bar is much higher. You have to describe those things in more detail. So it's a very factually nuanced as well, in addition to being legally nuanced. And you've got to hit both of those, the fact and the legal, to be able to answer this question effectively. And maybe that's why there's so much confusion out there about what things are, especially if you're an inventor without a patent background or a legal background. And that's a pretty tough determination to make by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of different things to think about when it comes to answering this question, but I think we've done a good job of giving an overview of kind of, what's the idea? What's the difference between the concept and an invention? So I think just the fact that there is even a difference between the two, I think we've done a good idea of kind of generally talking about, how to answer that question. So yeah, of course, with anything that we talk about, there's more that goes into it than that. But just for, the purposes of this podcast, I think we've done a pretty decent job of answering that question. Do you have anything else to add, Summer?
No, I think this is good. Jamie, one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to, as a joke at the end of the episode, they say, "We've done it again. We made the best podcast episode on this subject possible." So I'm going to say the same thing, Jamie. This was a tough one, but I think we've done it again. We've knocked it out of the park. I'm only kidding, but hopefully this was helpful.
No, I think we have done it again, Summer. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Summer. I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Jamie. And yeah, hope to see the listeners on the next one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know if you have any questions you want us to address in future episodes.
Yes, please do let us know. Jamie, should we share our email addresses? Mine is simple as summer at patentpending.ai.
And mine is, Jamie at patentpending.ai.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for joining us on the Patent Pending Made Simple podcast. I hope you enjoyed our show. If you'd like to receive updates, view the show notes, or access a direct link to any resource, go to the episodes page on patentpendingmadesimple.com. To help others find our podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks again for tuning in. I look forward to having you with us next time on Patent Pending Made Simple. This podcast has been hosted by Outlier Patent Attorneys and is not intended to, nor does it create, the attorney-client privilege between our hosts, guests, or any listener for any reason. The content of this podcast should not be interpreted as legal advice. All thoughts and opinions expressed herein are only those from which they came.